New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello, hi, it's me, yes, me, Bonnie Morgan Gonzalez, your doula for grief. Good morning, good afternoon, whenever you're listening to this. I hope that you're having just the best day ever. And thank you for tuning in. And I do want to say happy 4th. I know some of you will be seeing this on the 4th of July. And just want to let you know that we're pre-recording this. It's a beautiful Saturday morning here in Jalisco. So I can't wait to get your feedback when you see this program. So thank you. I am a grief coach, a registered nurse, a religious science practitioner, and a licensed soul collage facilitator. My most important role is just being a human, a light here on planet Earth at this time. So just want to continue our conversation and dialogue on grief. And as I've said in each episode, that grief is caused by loss. And we experience loss in a myriad of ways. Divorce, relationships ending, aging, loss of a job, loss of some hope or dream that you held on to. And I do say that death, it's still the biggest loss we can experience, the mother of all losses, if you want to put it that way. And it doesn't even really matter the loss. The feelings that we have, the grief that we suffer is the same. And so it's loss is what we experience, and grief is what we feel. And just want my biggest desire here is to let you know that the superpower of grief is healing. And I found the most beautiful article a couple weeks ago around grief and mourning. And I wanted to just read this to you, to just get you in the frame of mind of giving grief a second chance, giving it a new perspective. And the article says, okay, grief may be the greatest healing experience of a lifetime. It's certainly one of the hottest fires we will encounter. It penetrates the hard layers of our self-protection, plunges us into the sadness, fear, and despair we have tried so hard to avoid. Grief is unpredictable, uncontrollable. There are no shortcuts around grief. The only way is right through the middle. Some say time heals, but that's a half-truth. Time alone doesn't heal. Time and attention heal. In grief, we access parts of ourselves that we were somehow unavailable to us in the past. I'll read that again. In grief, we access parts of ourselves that were somehow unavailable to us in the past. With awareness, the journey through grief becomes a path to wholeness. Grief can lead us to a profound understanding that reaches beyond our individual loss. It opens us up to the most essential truth of our lives, the truth of impermanence, the causes of suffering, and the illusion of separateness. When we meet these experiences with mercy and awareness, we began to appreciate that we are more than the grief. We are what the grief is moving through. In the end, we may still fear death, but we don't fear living nearly as much. In surrendering to our grief, we have learned to give ourselves more fully to life. And that is by Mark Matusa. And thank you, Mark, for that. I just felt that just so sets the stage for our conversation and dialogue today. Just taking a minute to just be with those words. Oh, today our topic is ways grief can affect our health, especially unresolved grief, and how it can wreak havoc in our bodies and on our health. And today I'm just super honored to have a beautiful guest, K Susanne Massey. And K Susanne is here to share her own personal story and knowledge on the subject. I so honor her and so welcome her. But a little bit about K Susanne before we get into our dialogue and discussion. K Susanne has had a full life experience in service. As a former nurse, yay to the nurses, as a certified professional working at a California community college, and as a licensed practitioner in Centers for Spiritual Living, in which she received her emeritus status in 2021. That means she's been a practitioner for a long time. She is a seasoned Science of Mind teacher and facilitator. She is also a labyrinth facilitator. K Susanne's life has been transformed through Science of Mind teaching, as well as other spiritual practices. Knowing that God is everywhere present in every situation at all times has been most comforting for K Susanne through the losses of all of her closest family members over the years. Embracing the principles of the Science of Mind philosophy has been a catalyst in her healing by bringing her into a deeper enlightenment and understanding. So welcome, K Susanne. It's just wonderful to have you here this morning. And just so delighted that you've said yes to the call to be here. So I just turn this over to you. Tell us a little bit about K Susanne and your life experience and your experiences with loss and grief and health challenges that can arise from unresolved grief.
Thank you, Bonnie. It is most excellent to be here and to share this opportunity to explore into grief and how it affects our health in a myriad of ways. Mm-hmm. Well, a little about me. I have been, as some of my introductions said, in service for most of my life. I've been a caretaker for a great deal of my life. As I used to tell my close lifelong friends, when they were doing whatever people do in their 30s, I was a caretaker. I had my daughter, and my sister had passed away. I had my 2 small nieces and my aging mother.
Yes.
And in all of these experiences, one thing that has really marked a large part of my experience, as well as the experience in my family, is that we moved through several critical losses. When I was very young, when I was 21, my brother was murdered, and he was 33 years of age. He left 2 small children and a teenage daughter. And then that was the beginning of, it was in 1981. So toward the beginning of the 80s. And then in 1989, my sister, who was 36, died of an aneurysm and left 2 small girls. Well, what I experienced in these 2 particular losses, these were 2 of my mother's youngest children. She had 6 children, and 2 different sets, one in Texas and one in California and San Francisco. I was the youngest of the 3, but they were the 2 above me. And I saw my mother, who was a woman of great faith, but I saw her just really take these losses inward, not really sharing. And then it began to affect her health. I remember when my brother was murdered, she had to have a pacemaker inserted. And then at the end of the decade, when my sister died, she had to have another pacemaker inserted. And that one was had expired its effectiveness. I, for the first time, began to realize how the great loss of losing someone that meant so much in your life, it was a critical person in your life experience, could really, truly affect one's health.
Yes.
Now, working in the health field at that time, I certainly saw people who were going through a plethora of health challenges. But this was really the first time from experiencing it in my own personal life where I could connect. And therefore, I could really relate to some of my patients and their stories of losing their husband or losing a child or losing a parent. And then illness is the result that unfolded in their life. I began at shortly around that time when my sister made her transition to begin to explore new thought. I found it for me in my own process. I had taken a different path than my mother. My mother had totally relied on her faith and prayer. And I had gone into therapy, into group therapy and modalities of healing through my loss. But when I embraced new thought, and particularly science of mind, it became an avenue for me to really let go and explore and to expand into that healing process of grief, of letting go of the physical experience and embracing the spiritual and the everlasting experience, I would like to call it.
Yes.
So that's my story and how I began to recognize how grief can and does affect one's health.
K Susanne, I wanted to ask you were talking about your mother, and it feels like that cumulative grief that comes into play when there's one loss after the next. Do you remember, did your mother have a support network. I know that you said she had her spiritual practice. And what I know from experience is that with some people, cumulative grief can cause you to even question your spiritual practice, your spiritual direction. That can be on shaky ground. Do you remember how your mother moved through her grief?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. And that is very true. For my mother, as I said, she had a deep and abiding faith. She had a very strong community, a church community.
Mm-hmm.
She really, with both losses, there was a lot of support, and she delved into her spiritual community. She delved into her spiritual practices. She was a Seventh-day Adventist, part of the traditional Christian practice. And she found that to be of great comfort to her.
Mm-hmm.
I, looking on the outside,
Yes.
did want to encourage her. And I did encourage her to think about maybe joining, being a part of a support group, or parents that have lost children.
Yes.
And particularly with my brother saying that he was murdered.
Yes.
But both of them being 33 and 36 years respectively, they were fairly young. And I wanted her to have that extra comfort. But that wasn't the choice she made. But I saw her really ground more into her faith. And what was comforting to her and her particular beliefs was that she believed that she would see them again, because she believed in after death, and after some point, she believed in the return of Jesus the Christ. And in that belief system, she held on to that she would see her children again.
Yes, yes. There's 2 points that you bring up with your mother that I'd like to just delve a little bit, or just a little bit more dialogue around that. Having lost 2 children and one to murder, that is another set of emotions that come into play. Another form, is that the word I want to use? And just another layer added onto the grief, the fact that, did this really have to happen? It's what most of the people that I've been with say, did this have to happen? And there is something to be said about being supported by people that have experienced that same type of loss. And I feel that you were so right on to encourage her to seek out a support group that deals with the loss of a loved one through murder. And the same with suicide. Having those people that know exactly what you could be experiencing. And with your mother, was she open to that, or that wasn't?
That wasn't really what she was open to. She really felt that all she really needed to do was to dig down deeper, as it were, into her spiritual rituals and attending church, being in the community, being around others. But I do say, as I, again, looking from the outside, I saw where it really affected her. And I believe not only the loss, but as you mentioned, having a child make a transition through the way of murder is a deeper trauma. And I saw that it affected her. And I know that I really believe, and she actually told me this, if it had not been for me and the younger ones, her grandchildren that she probably would have chosen to exit, not in the vein of suicide, but just in the vein of, okay, I'm done. I'm tired of life now.
What is it? The broken-hearted syndrome.
Absolutely.
People die from, spouses die from that, or people that just have had a traumatic loss. That's the broken-hearted syndrome. And that is real. So, K Susanne, it sounds like during that time, you were supporting your mother. How are you dealing with your grief? Did you have time?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you very much for asking that, because you're right. I was supporting my mother. I also, I might add that the year that in 1989, at the end of the decade, when her daughter, my sister, made her transition, less than 6 months later, her 100-year-old mother died. So it was a
K Susanne, I'm just barely hearing you.
Made her happy. And what I did, first off, when my brother passed away, I had it was a pattern of mine, which was emotional eating when sadness came up. So I started to delve into healing from that. And in that vein, I should say, and in that realm of deeper understanding, I went into counseling, which was most helpful for me.
K Susanne, I just want to.
I was also
K Susanne,
I just with a lot of yes.
I just want to let you know you're freezing up, and so it's breaking up a little bit, and I wasn't able to follow the entire conversation.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I was saying that during that time where I was supporting my mother as well, was also a time when I, as a 21-year-old, was in college and having, the experiences we have at that age. And so with the therapy that I went into, I also made sure that I had my community around me and had activities that were exciting or part of my passion to be a part of. And that's really what I did the first time. The second time, when my sister died and then my grandmother died, I had a small baby myself. And so it was really important to me to take time to, at that time I had moved from San Francisco to Sonoma County. So I took time to go out in nature, to go to the ocean and be sure that even if it was just a half a day, a week, that I would have some time for myself, for a nice drive, time to just be still. And that really helped me support my mother, because and then at that point, it was her health had really significantly changed. So it was supporting her emotionally, but also being the caregiver and the person to support her through the health challenges that she was having.
Yes. And I hear you saying that you were taking care of yourself, going out in nature. It sounds like you had just this awareness that a lot of people in the middle of grief, and then with tons of responsibility, lose sight of that. And what would you offer to someone that is what is that called, the sandwich generation, that you're taking care of elderly parents, you've got your own life, and then loss comes into play. We'll say death, but also your own life is going with losses that are happening. What would you say to people that are feeling just this sandwich effect?
Well, thank you for that question. I would say the most important thing first is to find yourself a supportive community, be it a spiritual community, be it a community of friends. It may be strong ties that you have in your work setting, but it is critical to find a supportive community. The next thing that I would offer is, if you are willing to find yourself at some sort of counseling. It could be group counseling. It could be one-on-one with a counselor. But it would be important to have that outlet, to have a place where you could go, you could talk about the transitions, the changes, the losses, the grief, how it is affecting you. But also you would have the ability of someone that could listen and hear, as well as offer resources. The next thing that I would suggest is that you just have to make what I used to call a date with yourself. You have to ensure that you have your own personal, some call it now me time, however you want to define it, have your specific time, because that is critical, particularly in those spaces where you are sandwiched, where you have your elderly parents, you may have your own children, as well as you have work that you go to sustain your life. You're really squished in. Therefore, you need to feel that there is something that's just yours, that you determine, you choose, and you have complete autonomy over. Because many times when you are sandwiched in, you're moving along with what needs to be done. And most of it is out of your control. But when you pick something and choose something for yourself, then you feel like you, in the midst of all of the giving and the caregiving and the loving and the supporting and the compassion that you're giving to your loved ones, that you are giving that to yourself as well. That's the advice that I would give. Yes.
And I think we're going to take a break. And when we come back from the break, I love that you talked about find yourself a supportive community, because I would like to give like 4 guidelines for the 4 friends that you should have. So why don't we take a break, and then we'll come back. And when we come back, I want to talk about not only the 4 friends that can be really instrumental or building your, what I call your grief spiritual squad. I want to ask you about the labyrinth walking and for healing. So we'll take a break and we'll come back with my special guest, K Susanne Massey, who is just a wealth of information and has true insight. So we'll take a break and come back. welcome back. Welcome back. This Your Doula for Grief with my special guest, K Susanne Massey. And we were just having a really interesting conversation around the importance of having a good community of support while you're going through grief. And K Susanne, you spoke to that, saying that was instrumental in your own recovering, correct? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, and I wanted to offer, I'm trying to come up with an acronym like for GPS, Grief People Squad, or your own personal grief squad. Maybe I'll have to give up the GPS. But anyway, I call it my spiritual love squad or my grief squad. And what you need, okay, 4 key people. And if you can find all these characteristics in one person, well, hats off to you. But in my experience, speaking from the I find that when I'm with different people, it brings out different parts of my own personality, allows me to explore me in a different way. So the 4 that I say you need to have in your squad, number 1 is someone that has experienced the same type of loss that you have. Someone that has experienced that same type of loss. Number 2 is somebody that treats you just like normal. Hey, girl, come on, let's go check out a movie. Come on, let's go for margarita night down at the Toqueria. Or what? Somebody that just lets you just remember that you are alive without any other agenda, no strings attached. You're alive and you're here to enjoy life. In my Buddhist practice, we would say, suffer what there is to suffer and enjoy what there is to enjoy. That life offers both. No one can escape sadness and hardships, not even a Buddha or a sage. So you just need somebody that lets you just have fun. And the next one, which is really hard, is somebody that will just listen. Somebody that will just listen, let you pour your heart out, not move to make you feel better, like, oh, girl, that's okay, you know, you're going to be. No, somebody that just listens. Our stories need to be validated. Our stories need to be heard. The one gentleman I took the workshop from, his name is David Sumkin. And he says that he hires someone, not hires, he says to a friend, hey, I'll take you out to dinner, I'll pay for dinner if you'll just listen to me. I've got this, I just need someone to listen. And he says, yes, he takes them to dinner. And the second they start to say, oh, let me tell you, they go, no, this is my time. This is my time. But I thought that was cute. But for me, I do have that kind of friend that I can call and just say, hey, girl, can I tell you what's in my heart right now? Or I have a friend, that my listener friend, that I can call and she'll say, oh, Bonnie, how are you? And I'll say, fine. She goes, no, that doesn't sound right. What's up? What's going on? So I feel honored to have that. And the last one, the 4th friend is someone who's a truth teller. Someone who will tell you the truth. That, you know, hey, Bonnie, I've noticed that you've been, you know, buying like 5 gallons of Haagen-Dazs ice cream every day and plowing through that. or, you know, I think there's like 10 bottles of, you know, wine that you've consumed. And anyway, I like to really bring humor. I think if we can laugh, that always helps. It always helps me. But somebody that will just tell you the truth about where you are, but not someone that says, oh, you know, get over this. You've been grieving for none of that. truth about where they see you going, just the truth about, wow, you really are. I'm noticing that you're more depressed. Is it really time to, get some help? But someone that will just be honest with you. So those are the four. Those are the four. One, someone who's been through the very same thing that you've been through. Number two is somebody that just allows you to be normal and giddy and have fun. Number three is that listener, because that's the key, to be heard. I feel that's why coaches, psychotherapists are so, we're listeners. We are listeners. And number four is the truth teller. So that makes up the spiritual squad, or the grief squad, I'll call that. So do you feel that you've had that in your community, your support? Was there any of the friends lacking in any way? Or not lacking, but you wish you had more of a truth teller or a normal.
Yes, thank you for that question, Bonnie. Yes, actually, for me, that's been one of the staples of my life, is because I have this set of lifelong, literally, we three of us met each other, four of us actually, when we were probably about a month of age at church. Wow. So they've been my sisters for life. And maybe there's another one that came in fourth grade. And each of them filled critical roles. And some are really good listeners. Some listen with deep compassion, but also have that ability to say, hey, did you, I just noticed that you did consume a lot of things you normally don't eat. What's going on,
Yes.
And then also that place of, which is important, that I also found in therapy, but that place of someone that will just tell me exactly what they see.
Yes.
And that was very important. So I would call one friend that would just listen, maybe two, and then another friend that would listen, and then after listening would say, okay, so I hear this. What can I do to support? And what are you doing for yourself? Or how is this affecting you? And that was really critical. That was very critical during those times, particularly during the transitions. And also, it was when my nieces came to live with me. Love them dearly, but this was another, like, okay, how do I do all of this? And it was really critical to have that support where people would just listen. And, I'd just say, hey, I just need somebody to listen to me today. And what you said is absolutely critical. You need all of that. Your what did you call it originally? GPS squad.
Yeah, we'll call it a GPS for now. Person squad.
Yes.
We'll just say GPS till I get the acronym worked out. Yes. K Susanne, did you yourself experience any physical challenges by moving through grief?
Oh, absolutely. When I've experienced the greatest physical challenge was when my spouse of 14 years passed away in 2014. She died of sickle cell anemia, and there had been years where her health was well, and then we went through challenges, and she was her greatest advocate. But at the same time, it was good to have another advocate and another set of eyes with her, which was me.
Yes.
And when she passed away, within, I would say, less than 6 months, I was diagnosed with pneumonia. I had several times where I didn't go to the emergency room, but because of my medical background, I knew what was going on. I was just completely exhausted to the point where it felt at times I would just pass out. And I also recognized in my body in the first year or two, I just had no energy. It took everything for me to get up, get myself dressed, get to work, finish my work, come home. And during that time, I'm an extrovert. I like to say I'm an extrovert, but I became quite insular because it took so much energy to do the Monday through Friday that on the weekend, I had to really be with myself and recharge my batteries, as it were, to sustain myself for the next coming week.
Yes, K Susanne. And I just want people to know, and if they don't, maybe they do already, but to remember that when we grieve, when we receive that information, it's even if you were expecting someone to die, if you're having anticipatory grief, when it happens, it is a shock. It is, even though you feel like you've mentally prepared, but it's still a shock. And what I was going to say, it throws our body into that state of shock. Cortisol levels rise. It's the body's way of trying to protect itself until it can incorporate this new way of being and moving in the world. And the cortisol levels high for a period of time really starts to wreak havoc on your heart, on your immune system. Inflammation happens. I want people to know there's a real physical response in the body that happens when you're in grief, grieving, mourning. We'll say when you're in grief, and being aware of that. And when you have these high levels of cortisol, you really do need to rest. It is exhausting. It is exhausting. So rest is really a big key. And it's unfortunate because if you're dealing with the loss of a death, there's so many things that's happening that needs your attention that rest is kind of the last on the list. I just wanted to ask your biggest support system after the loss of your spouse, which I'm just really heartbroken for you to lose your spouse. That's someone that knows you intimately. So, who was your greatest, or what was your greatest support during that?
Thank you for asking. One great support system was my daughter. She had moved in to help care for my spouse toward the last year of her life. And in fact, around the last few days when she was making her transition, my daughter, who worked nights, would come in and she would help me clean her up and turn her when she came in the morning. And then she would help before she left at night. And she was a great support system during that time. Another life support system for me were certainly my group of sisters, my lifelong friends.
Yes.
But also my nieces that I'd raised, or like my daughters. Each one of them had one had a toddler, and then shortly after my wife passed away, the other had a baby. And those little ones they were just amazing to my time of support. They were great comfort to me. And the toddler, had been quite fond of my spouse, and he called her Grampty, and he called me Tutu. So he would talk about her, and we could talk about her together, and that was just
precious,
so uplifting to my soul. So that's where my biggest support came during that time of moving through grief and loss. And then I also I went to a group therapy of the individuals that had losses on various different levels. And I found an online grief group. And this online grief group, another great support was, because I'm a writer as well, I could write about it. And, you know, those in the group, they would comment and they would encourage me. And we had a retreat coming together on Whidbey Island in the Puget Sound, actually about less than 2 years before my wife passed away. And that was extremely wonderful to meet these people who came from England and all over the United States. And we're on this beautiful island, and we could just talk about our grief. And one night we did this ritual where we just took plates and threw them against a wall.
Oh my goodness.
It was so good just to throw those plates and do a little cursing and just let it all out, you know? So that was the journey of what held me and helped me to move toward a place of going from the deep grief to a place of holding my dear one in my heart and moving forward, you know, and living life big and bold for both of us.
K Susanne, I really feel like you should be the poster child for moving through grief. And there's a couple things I want to say. I just so love your sharing your story and just how you continue to embrace life, and wanting our listeners to know that yes, we offer all this, but our heart is still broken. We still have pain. Yes. And I don't want to give the illusion that, if you do this, this, and this, and you'll be happy and, you know, clicking your heels and home sweet home. It's like, no, these are tools to use to move through one of the most challenging times of your life, and wanting to offer you that, yes, on the other side of it, there is life. And as I said, not wanting people to think we're putting a bow on it and tying it up, but sharing some of the tools to move through so that grief doesn't get stuck in our bodies. For women, as you've said, you know, your mother with her heart, and I don't know if you felt that her heart was unresolved grief or just the fact that she lost a child.
I would say that it was both and. Mm-hmm. It was losing those two children and then the unresolved grief.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing that intimacy with losing your spouse and your mother's experience with losing two children. I want to bring you back to being a labyrinth facilitator. If you could share, have you used walking the labyrinth as a healing tool?
Oh, absolutely. I already had my practices, my spiritual practices that have transformed my life, but I began walking the labyrinth in the early part of this century, and at a conference, actually at Science of Mind conference, and it was transformative. And I started studying about it and bringing it more into my life. I would find, there's a labyrinth locator that you can find online, and I would walk labyrinths on hillsides. I'd go to Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, other communities, other churches in the area in which I lived. And I found it just amazingly uplifting and supportive to my soul. I would walk labyrinths in the morning before I'd go to work. I would walk them in the evening, on the weekend. I found also tools or labyrinth, canvas labyrinth, a small canvas labyrinth, other various little smaller labyrinths that I could use with my hand, so I could do like what we call a finger walk. And all of it was just uplifting to my soul. And I had always said that I wanted to go to Chartres, France, and take the labyrinth facilitator training. Well, as life kept happening and went on, finally during the pandemic, around the fall of the pandemic, in September, which was also the year I turned 60, I decided, I'm going to do it. And I can't go to Chartres, but they had it online, and I took the training, and it was just amazing. And I've been facilitating labyrinth walks, a lot of them finger walks online, but also looking forward to facilitate more in person. But it has just been a wonderful transformation, and it has been a tremendous healer when I was moving through grief.
Wow. Oh, that, wow. There's so many things I want to say to that, but here's what I want to say. My experience with the labyrinth, I do something, a process called soul collage, and they had a labyrinth walk, and my mother had to just transition. So I took her picture, held it close to my heart as I walked the labyrinth. And in the middle of when I reached the center, I just communed with her in that center, and just really incorporated her spirit as I exit and walked out. And that was really healing. My mother and I didn't have the best relationship. What is that, TMI? Anyway, that was a way of really healing even that rift, that tension that I felt. And that was my experience with the labyrinth. And also for one of our class training projects, I made everyone like a finger labyrinth using that cuff paint. And it's just, yes. So you're speaking to my heart with the labyrinth. Oh, okay, Suzanne, thank you. I just wanted to bring our conversation to a close. But before we close, and I just want to honor your mother, your siblings, and your wife by, if you just say their names, that would be an honor.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for asking me to do that. My mother's name was Ruth. My brother's name was Billy. My sister's name was Diane. And my spouse's name was Enid.
What was her name?
Enid.
Oh, Enid. Okay. Well, thanks for Ruth, Billy, Diane, and Enid for being here with us today, honoring them. So I didn't know if there's anything else that you would just like to share with someone who may be, it just sounds truly like cumulative grief and having any kind of physical challenges.
I think the last thing that I would like to say is just hold on to the love. Allow yourself to feel whatever you're feeling for as long as you're feeling it, and allow yourself to reach out to the community, to individuals that will give you support, that are supportive, and just allow yourself to be.
Yes. K Susanne, those are my words exactly. And you so express that or amplify that in your sharing of don't isolate. You can't. It is not good to try and grieve alone. I think Bell Hooks said it best, that you can't heal in isolation, that you cannot heal in isolation. And if you're in that place, feeling that you can't reach out, I just want you to know that people want to help. We really are, that's our desire. We are social creatures, and you can believe that somebody wants to hear from you today. And if you're on the other side, that if you know of a friend or loved one who is in grief or grieving the loss of someone, or a loss, or that is in grief, you reach out, you do the legwork. And I do say this all the time. Do not say to a person who is in grief, call me if you need me, I'm here. Call me if you need me. They're not going to call. The better thing to say is that I'll be checking in with you. I'll check in with you next week, or I'll check in with you whatever day is good. And just keep that commitment. But just knowing that when people are in grief, it's really, as I said, it's exhausting to grieve, and they may not have that bandwidth to even reach out. So I just want to say, I don't know where the time has gone, K Susanne. It has flown by. And I feel so privileged to have had this time with you, to share, your deepest personal stories. And I just thank you for doing that. And I know Ruth, Billy, Diane, and Enid are all right there on your shoulders. Yes, right there loving you up. So
thank you for inviting me.
Yes. So I just want to thank everyone for watching Your Doula for Grief. And I just want to thank New Thought Media Network for having a platform that just allows for honest dialogue, for deep, soul-stirring dialogue. Also, if you need prayer, you can send in prayers to New Thought Media Network. I'm sure Diego put the banner up. Thank you so much. Prayer at ntmedia.org. Really, don't do grief alone. Your story needs to be heard. Your story needs to be validated. So just don't do this alone. Make a donation to New Thought Media Network so that we can continue to bring you just top quality programming. And I am honored and privileged. So enjoy until next time. Thank you.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience, or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. Contact